When most cities sink into the silence of the early morning, there is a place where everything intensifies. While the street lights go out, somewhere far from the everyday noise lights, engines, conveyor belts and ramp vehicles turn on and work without rest. These are the cargo airport platforms, a world hidden for most, but essential for global trade to function before the sun rises again. In the midst of that frenetic activity, an obvious question arises. If the night seems like the worst time to fly, why is it precisely when most of the world's cargo takes off? That is the paradox we want to resolve, because it is no coincidence that cargo planes cross the sky when almost no one sees them, and it is not a whim of the industry, nor an inherited custom, nor a simple time slot. What happens at night represents the very heart of how goods move across the entire planet, from small packages to tons of products traveling between continents. Therefore, for global logistics, the night becomes a perfectly calculated space. While during the day packages are collected, sorted, stored, or prepared, it is during the night when all that material has to move, and it has to do so quickly so that it reaches its destination before dawn. Understanding why the night is essential implies understanding how a complete logistics cycle is synchronized within a single day. Every minute matters, every route is coordinated, and every nighttime operation has an exact purpose. When the entire system depends on that cycle being completed within a matter of hours, the choice of when to fly stops being a minor detail. Then the real question becomes another. What is it about the organization of a single logistics day that forces thousands of planes to take off precisely when the rest of the world sleeps? To understand it, one must look at how that complete logistics day really works, because the global cargo network does not operate with broad schedules or comfortable margins, but within a strict 24-hour cycle that repeats every day without exception. Within that cycle, every minute counts, each phase depends on the previous one, and any delay multiplies in a cascading effect throughout the system, to the point that the night ceases to be an optional resource and becomes the hinge that holds the entire process together. That mechanism is only understood when one observes how the day unfolds step by step, beginning in the morning when the packages transported during the night arrive at their final destinations. Distribution centers receive the newly landed cargo and immediately distribute it to last-mile vehicles, in the stage in which delivery drivers go out into the streets and complete the deliveries that most people receive between the morning and midday. Throughout the afternoon, one of the most intense phases of the day begins, the massive collection of packages. Companies, businesses, warehouses, and households generate shipments that must be introduced into the network as soon as possible, and it is at this moment when the volume starts to grow and all that material has to reach the sorting centers before nightfall. Most of the cargo that will fly a few hours later is being collected precisely during this time slot. As the day progresses towards sunset, collection trucks converge at logistics centers. They arrive from dozens or hundreds of kilometers away, loaded with shipments that will have to cross the country or the continent during the early morning hours. This phase is critical because it marks the beginning of the time window in which ground logistics hands over to air logistics. When night falls, the most decisive phase of the cycle begins, the massive sorting within the hubs. In these facilities, thousands of packages are handled per minute using automated conveyor belts, optical scanners, destination-based separation, and teams that must work with impeccable precision. Everything collected during the day is concentrated in a few hours to be redistributed with precision to the planes that will take off afterward. It is an extremely time-sensitive process, since if the volume is delayed upon arrival at the hub, the plane cannot be loaded on time, and if the hub slows down, the entire network becomes misaligned. At that moment, with the night already advanced and sorting operating at maximum efficiency, cargo planes enter the scene. These aircraft cannot take off before the packages have been sorted, and they cannot wait until the next day because they would break the cycle. For the cargo to reach its destination early in the morning, the flights must take place exactly between midnight and the early hours of the morning. A system that operates with this level of synchronization has global implications, because large courier companies operate like clocks, coordinated on a worldwide scale, and any delay, even of just a few minutes, can affect connections across multiple continents. For this reason, nighttime flights are not an operational preference but a systemic necessity. If cargo planes were to fly during the day, the goods would not reach the next point in the cycle in time for the morning delivery phase, and thousands of shipments would be delayed simultaneously. The key is not that the night is a quieter time, but that it is the only moment when packages are ready to travel long distances within the same logistics day. That nighttime window allows the chain to complete its cycle before dawn and makes it possible for a package collected in the afternoon to be on the other side of the country early the next day. But there is still a fundamental piece to understand within this global architecture. If everything depends on the cargo arriving on time, how does the enormous system that sorts thousands of packages in a matter of hours actually work on the inside? For thousands of packages to cross a country or even a continent while most people sleep, the network depends on a type of facility designed to operate with almost surgical precision. These are the nighttime hubs, gigantic centers where the logistics flow reaches its peak intensity and where each package is assigned the exact destination it must follow before being loaded onto the aircraft that will carry it to its next point in the network. In a literal sense, they are the hidden heart of the entire system. Within that system, a nighttime hub operates in a very different way from a warehouse or a conventional airport because it is the point where dozens or hundreds of trucks from multiple cities converge simultaneously, all loaded with the goods collected throughout the day. This convergence can only occur at night when the daily volume is complete. Before that, it would not make sense because the ground network is still operating, and afterward it would be too late for the planes to take off on time. That is why hubs have such a strict operating window. When all that cargo begins to arrive at the hub, the activity enters a phase of massive unloading in which trucks position themselves at assigned docks and within minutes, all the material is transferred inside the facility. From that point on, an automated choreography is set in motion that operates at a speed that is hard to imagine. Conveyor belts are activated over hundreds of meters, separating packages by size, reading codes, identifying destinations, and sending each item along its proper route, while computer systems process in real time thousands of possible destinations and adjust the sorting according to the available flights and the routes planned for that night. Within that same system, packages move through an intricate network of belts that functions like a set of logistical arteries through which a continuous flow circulates, in which each shipment finds its path among dozens of possible options, while machines and sensors sort thousands of units per minute and maintain a constant pace that cannot fail. If a belt were to stop or a section were to become saturated, the delay would multiply throughout the entire network, and the planes waiting on the ramp would not be able to be loaded on time. Amid that constant movement, what appears frenetic from the outside actually operates as a choreographed precision in which operators supervise the functioning of the belts, resolve jams in seconds, reroute problematic packages, and manually coordinate those shipments that require special handling. Because although a large part of the process is automated, human intervention remains essential to maintain the exact pace. And it is this combination of advanced machinery and specialized teams that allows the hub to function like a clock. Once the sorting is completed, the goods are grouped into large containers or pallets assigned to each aircraft. And it is at that moment when time once again plays a critical role, because planes cannot take off until their cargo is ready, but they also cannot wait too long without compromising the global network. There is a very narrow loading window in which if everything is delayed, the planes do not arrive at their destination on time, and if sorting finishes too late, part of the cargo is left behind. These hubs are at the same time the most vulnerable and the most essential point of the system, since everything depends on these facilities operating with extreme precision for a few hours. A delay in one hub can trigger delays in another part of the world due to poorly connected links, missed flights, and logistical routes that must be reorganized. And precisely because these centers are designed to operate in the middle of the night, cargo planes must take off during that same period to fit into the global chain. But understanding how hubs drive nighttime activity is only part of the story. It is also necessary to look at what happens in the sky, because this schedule does not only work on the ground, but also in the airspace. Then a new question arises. If these centers can only operate as the night advances, what happens up there that makes that same moment also the most efficient for flying? When nighttime hubs finish sorting and planes begin to be loaded, another reason why the night is ideal for cargo aviation becomes evident. During those hours, the airspace and airports operate in a very different way, with less traffic, fewer restrictions, and a much more efficient operational window that cargo fully takes advantage of. If one observes what happens during the day, The contrast is clear because commercial aviation concentrates most of the movement and airports receive continuous waves of passenger flights that arrive and depart following peak demand schedules, which generates congestion on runways, taxiways, aprons, and terminals. In that context, operational priority is oriented toward passenger transport, whose punctuality directly affects thousands of people on each flight. And under those conditions, cargo flights, which depend on an extremely time-sensitive network, would not have the space or fluidity necessary to operate efficiently. When night arrives, that pressure on the system begins to disappear and the functioning of the airspace changes notably because the number of passenger operations drops drastically and airports begin to operate with less traffic, fewer approach sequences, less movement on taxiways, and a much lower workload for air traffic controllers. All of this translates into something essential for cargo aviation: fewer delays. And precisely because there are fewer delays, time becomes the most critical factor for air freight transport, where every minute of delay in a takeoff or landing can break the entire cycle of the logistics day. Unlike passenger transport, in which a delay can be inconvenient but isolated, in cargo any delay affects the entire network, from sorting to final delivery. And that is why operating at night is so advantageous, because there are no queues on the runway, no saturated approach sequences, and planes can take off and land practically on schedule. In that scenario, lower congestion not only reduces waiting times, but also improves flight efficiency, since with clearer airspace, controllers can assign more direct routes, avoid diversions or holding patterns, and maintain a much more predictable operation. Less traffic implies lower fuel consumption and allows clearances and level changes to be managed more quickly, further reducing total flight time. That same advantage is also noticeable on the ground because during the night airports operate with much less operational pressure and aprons are more available. There are more positions open and logistics become more fluid. Loading and unloading are carried out without interference from passenger activity, which usually requires much more complex coordination, and ramp vehicles can move more freely, significantly shortening operation times. Under these conditions, the lack of interference becomes crucial for cargo companies because it allows each aircraft to complete all phases of the operation, from arrival to departure, including parking, unloading, and reloading, with a level of efficiency impossible to achieve during the day. Thus, the night becomes a privileged operational window for air cargo. It not only aligns with the moment when packages are ready to travel, but also offers an environment without congestion, faster and more efficient. But there is still a decisive factor to understand why the night is so attractive for this type of flight. If operations work better during these hours, why is it also the most profitable time to put a cargo aircraft in the air? The answer lies in the fact that, in addition to offering a more agile and less congested operational environment, the nighttime window significantly reduces costs. During the night, airport fees, infrastructure availability, and the very organization of companies make flying more economical. That is why, beyond efficiency in the airspace, there is a very clear financial reason that drives the concentration of these operations when the rest of the world sleeps. One of the clearest factors is the system of differentiated airport fees between peak hours and off-peak hours, which airports themselves use to balance their activity throughout the day and avoid saturation during periods of highest demand. To achieve this, they apply lower charges during nighttime slots, when passenger operations decrease significantly, which translates into cheaper landings and takeoffs, lower parking costs, and a much more economical use of infrastructure. To this difference in fees is added another key element: slot availability, which during the day is very limited at major international airports, where most time slots are occupied by commercial flights, and competition to operate in those hours also drives up costs. Under these conditions, cargo aircraft, which need to move within a very narrow time window and cannot afford delays, would be trapped in the same bottleneck as passenger flights, whereas during the night the demand for slots drops significantly and allows operations with greater flexibility and at a much lower cost. Added to all this is the issue of direct operating costs, because when traffic is intense, congestion becomes expensive and forces aircraft to wait on the ground, consuming fuel without moving forward, to make diversions due to airspace saturation, or to delay approaches and departures. situations that increase the distance traveled and significantly raise expenses. In a cargo airline where every minute counts, these delays can add up to tens of thousands of dollars on a single flight, whereas operating at night eliminates much of these risks and allows that, with less traffic in the air and on the ground, fuel is consumed more efficiently and schedules are maintained as planned, reducing additional costs. Taken together, nighttime operations make it possible to reduce costs on all fronts, from airport fees and infrastructure use to fuel consumption, the probability of delays and regulatory limitations, so that flying at night is not only more convenient from an operational standpoint, but also ends up being the most efficient option in economic terms. But to fully understand why air cargo is concentrated in these hours, it is still necessary to look at another part of the system, since aircraft do not fly alone and depend on a ground network that also operates under very strict timing, so the advantage of flying at night only works when there is precise coordination with trucks, distribution centers, and routes that must fit within the same time frame. The aircraft is only one piece within a much larger mechanism in which ground and air logistics must move with almost perfect synchronization. The cargo that takes off during the early morning can only do so because hours earlier a network of roads, warehouses and distribution centers has been operating following a very precise cycle that prepares shipments, feeds the nighttime hubs, and then receives what the aircraft transports. Within that same logistics cycle, movement begins long before aircraft enter the scene. The process starts in the afternoon when courier companies and delivery services begin the massive collection of packages. Businesses, warehouses, industries, and households contribute a growing flow of shipments throughout this period, and the volume increases progressively until the end of the day, when most packages destined for national and international routes are already on their way to their logistics centers. These trucks travel dozens or hundreds of kilometers to arrive before nightfall, because everything that does not enter the sorting center on time will have to wait until the next day, completely breaking the 24-hour cycle. When night falls and the last trucks arrive at the logistics centers, one of the most delicate phases of the process begins, in which all the material collected during the day must be unloaded, registered, and prepared for sorting. It is not just about emptying vehicles, but about organizing each package, separating it by destination, and sending it to the automated chain that will direct it to the correct aircraft. Precision at this moment is essential because this is where the transition between ground and air logistics takes place, and what happens during these hours determines whether the aircraft can take off within their nighttime window. Once the cargo enters the system, everything moves against the clock within a very precise sequence in which trucks arrive at sunset, packages are sorted during the night, goods are grouped and loaded onto the assigned aircraft, and the aircraft must take off between midnight and the early morning for the cycle to be completed without delays. In such a tight scheme, each phase depends on the previous one, and any delay quickly propagates throughout the entire chain, because if trucks arrive late, sorting starts later, and if sorting is delayed, the aircraft are not loaded on time, which can cause a flight to take off outside its scheduled window and not arrive at the next logistics center before dawn, compromising the entire next day's delivery operation. In a system like this, even a margin of error of 20 or 30 minutes can affect an entire network. When the aircraft land early in the morning, the next handoff within the same cycle begins, and the cargo must move immediately from the aircraft to the distribution area to be placed onto the trucks that will carry out the local routes. This second ground phase must take place without delay because the more it is postponed, the less time delivery drivers will have to complete deliveries within the morning schedule, which is precisely the part of the process that users directly perceive when they receive their packages without imagining that during the night a complex sequence has been executed that keeps roads and aircraft perfectly synchronized. This coordination only works because the interdependence between ground and air transport is total within a cycle in which trucks collect during the day, aircraft transport during the night, and trucks set out again at dawn to complete deliveries, repeating the same sequence every 24 hours without interruption. That is why, when we observe cargo planes taking off in the middle of the night, it may seem like a simple, curious detail of the aviation world, but in reality it is the direct consequence of a global system that operates with the precision of a clock. The ground logistics that collect during the day, the centers that sort at night, the operational efficiency offered by a clear sky, the lower fees, and the need for everything to be ready by dawn are all part of the same chain. The night is not a complement to the operation, it is its core. What is fascinating is that all of this system takes place while most people sleep. The night is when logistics breathes, when the world reorganizes itself in silence so that when you open the door in the morning, everything is in its place. If you like discovering what happens behind processes that seem simple but hide enormous and invisible mechanisms, I invite you to subscribe and join us in upcoming videos. Each week we explore everyday phenomena with this same depth, so you do not miss anything that truly makes the world work.